Alright then, welcome back. If you've been sticking with me through the previous two videos, this will be the big tamale, the one you've all been waiting for, hopefully. The final of my 3 so far models that have been, I would say, based on the fan fiction that I've been writing, but the models actually came first. So, here we have the XCF, Xcom Fleet, Survivalist class vessel, Omaha. So the XCF Omaha. As you can see, it's very similar to the Predominance class, but with a fair few differences. First of all, it is armed to the fucking teeth. So let's get me in a little bit closer, and you can see what I mean. The stylistic wings, which were included on the previous 2 models, are now stubs, because one of the first things I tried to pick on directly was the design of the Avenger in XCOM 2. Interior, very utilitarian, very clunky, function over form, very human. But the exterior, even though it's been built with human hands, still has a lot of the alien curves from their own technology and their own designs worked in there. Now, XCOM vessels, I wouldn't say superficially, it'd be a lot deeper. Their superstructure, and as you can see by the engine design, is very similar to PHU class vessels, Pan-Human Union vessels of the various classes. So the interior layouts would be very similar to the Predominance class, which I showed you earlier. But the exterior, like these little wings, this kind of upward conning deck with various weapons strewn across it, more of these shield generators, the underslung hangar is a lot tighter into the hull, it has a lot more missiles across the top, and this front weapon array, in a complete departure from the other PHU vessels which I've shown you, is very much exposed. Because the whole idea of an XCOM vessel is that, unlike PHU vessels of similar classes, similar sizes, XCOM vessels are designed to punch so far above their weight, it's not even silly. So obviously you've got these stubbed wings, which aren't necessarily a requirement. You've got more shielding, a hell of a lot more kinetic shielding. Their energy barriers last for a lot longer than those of their PHU brethren, and the reason for this is following the Ethereal's mindset from the first 2 games, with alien weapons exploding into fragments that you then have to reassemble and design and reverse engineer your weapons in the first Alien War, the second Alien War, and so on. XCOM vessels are not designed to ever be taken. If they're ever in a threat of boarding actions, as if anyone would be daft enough to board a vessel full of XCOM soldiers with vastly upgraded Titan armor. You know, we're talking energy shielding, kinetic shielding, upgraded materials, lighter materials due to Mass Effect technologies being integral in their design. If you were stupid enough to try and ever board an XCOM vessel and got close to succeeding, the vessel would self-destruct. Because PHU vessels are limited on the tech scale to as far as magnetic weaponry and laser weaponry. In times of crisis, your standard PHU soldier, if the proper authorization was given, would be given access to plasma weaponry, which, as we all know, kind of following Long War and Long War 2's method of laying out the tech scale, you would have conventional, laser, mag weaponry, and then you'd either have enhanced lasers or coil guns, and then ending in plasma. Coil guns are also, you go across to the original Long War tech tree, Gauss weaponry. But in universe, and given enough time and enough common sense, XCOM scientists eventually found out that with Illyrium power cells scaling, in terms of the power outputs that plasma weapons can put out and the damage they can deal, it was actually more cost effective and more devastating to continue upgrading coil guns and Gauss weaponry to include mass effect accelerators and more Illyrium cells into a coil gun, which would deliver more bang for your buck than if you took a plasma rifle and continued to upgrade it along the same lines. But that's not to say that plasma weapons don't get used, they're just not the standard XCOM weapon. These dual barrel railguns, as they're designed to look like, would in effect be coil weaponry that would be a step above plasma weaponry. And I also thought that would be a nice touch for XCOM to return to projectile weaponry over plasma weapons, because it's a very human weapon. It's big, it's clunky, it's functional, and it's fucking mean looking. So to be able to start off with conventional and end on conventional on steroids, it's a very kind of humanity fuck yeah thing, but I just like the way that it works. But at the front, what you have are, as an especially oversized weapon system, kind of a miniaturized version of the particle accelerator system from the Prevalence class cruiser. You've got these big kind of magnetic confine ring things, you've got these kind of arcing sections here, you've got the central things, you've got all the shielding based around this very open and exposed weapon. But when that weapon fires, it will be taking down fucking dreadnought scale foes, and if it doesn't destroy them outright, it's going to give them one fucking hell of a headache. You've got this kind of top section across here where I really like what I managed to pull off with the various angles involved. The missile arrays, you can see them, I can see them. These things will fling out all of their missiles sideways and then forward in a massive alpha strike. You've got the Omaha's bridge, which is actually not the bridge. It's another conning deck. It's another kind of fire support tower. Think secondary bridge on the Enterprise D for any other kind of analogies and side descriptions to have. The actual bridge is deep inside the vessel, just a little bit above where this hangar bay is. And speaking of which, we've got another hangar bay section full of greebles, towers, all kinds of bits and pieces in there. We've got all these obvious sensor arrays that I've pointed out, but what we also have is kind of this side sensor array section here, which is mostly due to, with the Omaha, it's one of a series of vessels. You have the Normandy, you have the Omaha, you have the Juno, you have Gold, you have Point de Hoc. I kind of figured instead of following the Mass Effect convention as having Normandy as a ship, and then practically no more Normandy class vessels are ever seen in the story, with the exception of Cerberus and the SR2. And if I remember my canon correctly, the blueprints for the SR2 were stolen by Edie and then deleted, which means there were never going to be any more Normandy class ships beyond what you see or hear about in the fluff, like journal entries and so on and so forth. So I figured right from the very start, let's change this so of Arbiter and Harminger's version of the Normandy, the SR1, would be a ship class. So it's Survivalist class, but they're all named after the various locations of the Normandy beaches, with plans to build more. Being an XCOM vessel, it's never going to be a mainstream pan-human union vessel. They are very specialised, they strike well above their weight. They also have dedicated research and development decks inside, crew barracks. Every single one of these vessels, even though this is just a bog standard frigate class vessel, it is designed to operate as a mobile base along the same lines as the Avenger in XCOM 2. So if they're ever separated from the rest of humanity, they would be able to put up a fight by themselves for as long as possible to either defeat whatever enemy they're facing off against or make their way back in contact with the rest of humanity if possible. Along the back here you have more of these engines which I've slightly redesigned to match an XCOM style vessel, so you can kind of see the same design philosophy at work even if it's slightly aesthetically different. But yeah, this is the XCF Omaha. So as I kind of move everything back across, and you can continue just to have a peek at the glorious, glorious spaceship. And yeah. So these are the 3 models I've designed so far. I've written 14 chapters of the story, although 5 of them, I will admit to you, they're fucking codex entries. I had to kind of get something in there to set up the back history, to set up the world, to try and, I wouldn't say justify the changes, but at least set a tone. Because not only are the technologies different, the ship's different, the history's different, but the characters are different as well as a result. And I'm hoping as I keep writing, and eventually you guys will watch this, you'll see all of that kind of unfold. Because this whole thing started off as a thought experiment and has kind of moved into a way for me to move past my depression. And I know it's never going to be permanent, but at least I can try. So again, I would like to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. So, ta-ra for now.